I'm going to do a reaction to the largest comeback in Baylor football history. Yeah, it's bigger than 21 points, as you can tell in the title. 28-point comeback. They were down 35-7 in the game. 35-7 with 8 minutes, 8 seconds left in the third quarter. But Baylor decided the next drive, we got to take the points. Then the defense got a pick, and then the Baylor offense scored a touchdown. Then UCF had to punt the ball after a 3 and out. Then Baylor scored a touchdown again. Then a stupid score by the Baylor defense occurred by Caden Jenkins, a true freshman. Then UCF had to punt the ball away, and Baylor essentially decided, let's try to get down into field goal range, and if we don't, really close. It was like 1 minute 20. They're inside the 15 in the red zone for UCF, and they decided, you know what? Let's just run the ball 3 straight times. If we get a first down, it makes UCF call timeouts. And I know that's playing conservative in that situation, but you got to make UCF not to have any timeouts remaining. And what if you threw a pick? That would have been a bad thing right down there near the red zone. And given the red zone issues that Baylor's had this year, up to this point, I'm just being brutally honest. And I totally like the idea in that situation in 4th and 2 at the UCF 7. Let's take the points. No need to risk. Because what if you don't get it? Then you have to get a quick 3 and out on defense. Yeah, makes a lot of sense there. But I will say, UCF on that 3rd down and 10, Baylor nearly had them down. And you could see the film of like the game video highlights on this if you want. Timmy McClain was running around for his life after some pressure got to his face, and he almost got sacked in the end zone. He went up a few yards, to the 1 yard line, and just chunked it up. And UCF running back RJ Harvey caught the ball. How in the world did that happen? If that would have been a back down right there, Baylor wins the game with no more drama. I'm being completely honest. And yes, the UCF, the following play, got an incompletion, and then they caught a pass for 5 yards, and the clock ran. And he went out of bounds. UCF did. And it was 4th down and 2, and they got a first down, and they spiked the ball, and they only had 10 seconds. And they had the next play was an incompletion, and they had to go for a 59-yard field goal. And I know the guy made a 55-yarder against Boise State in altitude, but it was short. And even if it had the distance, possibly, it would have been wide. So I'm going to say this right now. I am so glad Blake Shapen is finally back to playing. Because the last few weeks, ever since the second half against Utah, the Baylor offense has looked not that great. And yes, I know Long Island, they got 30 points. But you get the point. And it was just mainly like a running game. And I know Sawyer got hurt and it didn't help. And I know we also ran into Texas' defense, which is way better than UCF. And UCF fans, you got to admit that. It's the truth. And the defense for UCF got gassed at the very end. They just didn't have a lot of depth. Baylor had 293 passing yards today, and thank goodness they had 153 rushing yards, which is a little more than double than they had last week. But I wish it was a little bit more. But you get the point. And Richard Reese came out of nowhere. And prior to this game, he did not have a ton of rushing attempts. But 16 rushing attempts for 100 yards. Where has he been? I'm serious. And Monterey Baldwin had a huge game, 7 receptions for 150 yards. And I know, and Keytron Jackson had a 2-point conversion in. And I don't blame him for going for the twos, because you got to make up the points somehow. I mean, in a deficit like this, like it happened. Yeah. But I will say this, the Baylor defense needs some work. I'm not going to be lying to you about that. No way. It needs some work. And I'm hoping that the 2 nose tackles in Trey Emery and Jarrell Boykins come back next week. And I will say this, Tech's not a running football team. They're more like a throwing football team. But I'm just telling the truth. And the Baylor defense today gave up some one-play drives. And to be honest, yeah, not good look. I mean, a 79-yard rushing touchdown and 65-yard passing touchdown. I mean, they even gave up the 2 guys alone 27 rushing attempts for 200 yards. That's a problem. And of course, I knew Tim McLean was a dangerous running threat too. I mean, and the Baylor defense needs to find a way to get more sacks. They only had 1. And they had 5 tackles for loss. Could have been more. And UCF defense had 4 sacks on the day and 7 tackles for loss. And I think part of the beginning issues in the game was not only the defense, but Blake Shapen he's rusty. And clearly, once he got the rust off, he was diamond. I mean, we had no choice but to lean on him. But overall stats for the game, Baylor had 22 first downs. UCF had 18. Of course, he won less. But they were 10 for 18 on third down, and UCF was 5 for 13. Baylor was 0 for 1, and then 2 for 2 for UCF. But both teams' defenses need work. I mean, Baylor gave up 469 rushing yards overall, and 446 for Baylor's offense. So yeah, and the Baylor run defense has to improve. But I will also say 7 penalties for UCF for 74 yards, and 4 penalties for Baylor for 35 yards. And yes, Baylor had a turnover, and that was a scoop and score. It was a play that was just hard to overturn when the officials didn't blow the whistles when forward progress was stopped. I mean, it's the truth. And I don't know why they didn't do it, but whatever. At least Baylor won in spite of that. I mean, in the truth, and also Baylor had forced 2 turnovers. That made the difference in the ball game, because a scoop and score, that's 7 points right there. And not only that, prior to, after the interception, which came right after the Baylor field goal in the third quarter to be down 35-10, Baylor scored a touchdown. So yeah, 14 points on turnovers is a big difference. And if without one of those, Baylor does not win this game. I'm just telling the truth. And all this. And this is, like I said, the biggest comeback in Baylor football history. And this feels so like 61-58 all over again in 2014 when Baylor was down 58-37 after Bryce Petty threw a pick 6. This has to be up there in terms of epicness, and maybe it surpasses it because 1, it's on the road and you're down 28. 1, it's on the road. 2, you're down bigger I mean, I will say this for both these teams going next week. Don't have an emotional hangover. I mean, I'm telling the truth because UCF has a tough game coming up. They got Kansas. And normally, when you say Kansas in football, they're terrible. No, they only got the first loss today. Yeah, that's going to be brutal. And Kansas is coming off of a blowout loss to Texas. I mean, that's the truth. And they could very well be 0-3 if you're not careful. Now, Baylor has Texas Tech next week. And both these teams have bye weeks after after that game, which I think is a good thing. I really do believe that Baylor could turn around their season after today's win. I really do. Because there are winnable games on the schedule. Like, first of all, you got Texas Tech at home next week. I know Tech won today, but Houston's bad. And speaking of that, we got Houston at home. We even got Iowa State at home. That's 3 winnable games. I mean, and yes, Cincinnati on the road prior to Iowa State, but I think Cincinnati is possibly winnable now. I do. Any game on the schedule. Maybe except Kansas State, I don't know. Because they're a Big 12 title, but this is a hostile UCF environment at the bounce house. If they could beat them there, I think any venue they could possibly win at on the road. However, they need to find a way to be better at home. As we could tell, they were 1-3 prior to that. But I will say, 2 of those games are against 2 top 10 teams. And yes, I didn't get Utah lost last night. I get that. But you can't tell me they're not a top 20 football team or top 15. And we know Texas is. I don't want to say the word back yet because they have some time to prove themselves if they're really back or not. But they're really good right now. Top 3 in the country. Easy. Or for sure top 5. You get the point there. And no team, like I said, when I was addressing to my stance on Aranda right now, no team is like Utah or Texas in terms of ranking for the rest of the year. And maybe Kansas State becomes ranked again. Maybe TCU does as well. But there are winnable games on this schedule. I mean, like I said, Texas Tech, Iowa State, Houston. I know that's just getting up to 5 wins. I know that does. And it doesn't require to get healthier, first of all, and improve on defense. But if their defense could just force turnovers in, that would be helpful. But I know we want good defense. I know we do. And even West Virginia at home at the very end. All you have to do against West Virginia's offense is simple. Load the box. Make them throw the ball. They're not that great at throwing the ball right now. I'm just telling the truth in all this. And I get TCU, it's not ideal to have back-to-back road games in Kansas State and TCU prior to West Virginia. I know it's not. And I know given I like with TCU in the past, but TCU's not as good as last year's team. They're not. And there's a lot of time left between now and then, and all the Baylor fans out there, you could stop your griping now about having not won a get an FBS win, not an FCS necessarily, because the FBS losing streak to teams is over. And not only that, you also shut up on the Aranda needs to be fired and his staff too. Look, let's just let them see what they could do. I think now this game will propel them and get some serious momentum. I mean, first of all, like I said, you got Texas Tech, and you could possibly beat Cincinnati, Iowa State, and Houston. That next 4 games, you can make a bowl. I'm just telling the truth. And yes, Kansas State might be tough, and TCU might be tough, but if you could win in that environment at the bounce house, you can't tell me they're not going to be able to win in any other environment. Not after today, especially with a young team. And I know they do need to improve, but you get the point in all this. And West Virginia at home, it's practical. I know West Virginia's beat Baylor once in Waco, but that was a 2017 team, and Baylor won 111, and Baylor scared the pants off of West Virginia in that game with the near comeback win. After that, it's been home team wins. I'm just being truthful in all this. So, I think, like I said, this is going to turn around the season. I fully believe it. Because these players could have thrown in the towel when they were down 35-7. And then we would possibly see maybe changes need to happen. I think I'm not going to say we're going to win every game. That's pretty hard, but at least make a bowl now. I would think it's possible, but I know there's some 50-50 games you got to take care of, and obviously you do not need to have an emotional letdown next week against Texas Tech. You can celebrate the win tonight, but then refocus for Texas Tech tomorrow. I'm just saying that as the truth. So, anyways, if you like this content, like it, subscribe, and see you guys later on our road to 600 subscribers now. Let's go. And this is like near 61-58, if not maybe possibly surpass it. And even that 2018 Oklahoma State game when Baylor was down 2 possessions and it came back to win that game. So that's all.